Welcome to AutoSuccess Cyber Corner, the podcast for auto dealer cybersecurity. I'm Kyle Alexander, and this is episode 3, Compliance versus Cybersecurity.
This podcast is brought to you by Proton Dealership IT. When your team is focused on selling and servicing vehicles, who is focused on keeping your systems secure? With a 24/7 365 operation, Proton can monitor, detect, and respond to potential network or cyber issues. Sleep easy knowing your dealership is covered.
Right now, I'm joined again by Sean Patronis. He's the Director of Information Security at Reynolds and Reynolds. Matt Stegner is also back with us today. He's the Manager of Information Security at Reynolds and Reynolds. Guys, thanks for joining me again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I think it's important to define the difference here between compliance and cybersecurity. So let's just start with that. What is the difference between compliance and cybersecurity?
So cybersecurity and compliance are symbiotic and complementary. Compliance is a function of validating that your business is meeting the regulatory requirements that may be imposed by laws or contracts, and helping your business understand how effective your controls may be. So cybersecurity will protect an organization's digital assets, systems from cyber threats by implementing technical controls and responding to those threats. So I would think of compliance more of as an audit function with some governance, and cybersecurity is more as doing the technical work to protect your business from threats.
Yeah, and to kind of further on compliance here, it really does help establish those base requirements, both legal and contractual requirements that an organization have to adhere to. You have to establish those, then they can use their various audits and internal process to validate that we are in compliance with those activities and those requirements.
Sometimes it's easy to think of analogies with compliance and cybersecurity. While they're not always perfect, let's think about like the roof on your house, right? Everybody has a house or lives in a house, hopefully. And the roof itself, is there's ways you're supposed to build a roof, to construct a roof. So there's laws that define, okay, here's how the structure needs to be built, and here's, what you must do, permits you must go pull, meet these code requirements. So think about that as compliance. The cybersecurity team or the IT teams, they're the ones building the roof, they're constructing it, they're the ones maintaining it, they're the ones making sure it stays up to code all the time. And then as the code changes, they do upgrades and patches and updates. And as, more powerful storms dictate the way we change laws, those compliance requirements change. And then when it's time to go rebuild your house or put a new roof on, you have to meet these new requirements. So you kind of can think about them as a symbiotic relationship, just like the roof on your house and how to maintain it.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, I think. It definitely helps me understand a little bit more what compliance and cybersecurity are in the realm of a dealership here. Now, maybe help me understand some of the importance behind this. Why do dealerships need both compliance and cybersecurity to prepare and prevent cyber attacks from happening?
So yeah, like as we said before, they really kind of work together. So with cybersecurity being all the things that we do to protect our organization and compliance being those requirements and validation, they really have to work together. So if we think about deploying a new device like a desktop or a server, there's a bunch of security aspects that we need to consider every time that we do that. And it's going to be really hard to remember those off the top of your head. So together, compliance will define what those are. The security team will go implement those things, and then compliance will come back in and validate that to create that efficiency and consistency of security across the organization.
So it's obvious that both of these really work well together, but again, there are the minor differences. So what are some high-level examples of things that are needed to keep a dealership compliant, but they may not necessarily fully protect a dealership?
Sure. Being compliant with a specific set of standards or policies is not necessarily the same as having an effective and robust information security program or system. So, you can meet the compliance, but doesn't mean you're going to be secure. So I'll give a couple examples that might be helpful. So maybe you have a policy that talks about passwords. Everybody should have one of these at their dealerships that says you must create, passwords that meet these minimum requirements. maybe you set the minimum requirements to something small, like 5 characters. While you can meet those standards, and everybody in the whole company might have a password of 5 characters, it's not the most secure way to generate passwords or to set passwords. You would prefer more complex passwords, maybe 8 to 12 characters or 10 plus characters with, upper lowercase or passphrases or something like that, or using MFA. Those are way more secure standards that you can implement, or way more secure passwords. But if you're meeting your minimum compliance requirements of 5 characters, it may not be the most secure. Another thing that we see a lot in dealerships is you'll have controllers that may be in charge of IT, and they'll be administrators in their Microsoft 365 tenants, or they'll be administrators on all the PCs with their account. And maybe your policy doesn't define that they can or can't be administrators. So your policy may not exist. So you're compliant technically with your policy, but in a real world, nobody should be using their administrator accounts to run their day-to-day operations in their email or on their desktops. They should be using standard user accounts, and then using their administrator accounts to do administrator functions, and they should be separate. So your policy may not have that limitation or may not have that language, and you may be compliant with it, but you're putting yourself at potential risk. Also, maybe you have some policies that dictate how you add and remove employees from the dealership, giving them username and passwords for different systems. Maybe that's a policy, you're following your policy. It says, okay, I set them up in these 12 different systems, and now when they are terminated, we go remove them from these 12 different systems. Well, that's a human-led process, and maybe you're following the letter of the law and the policy, but in the end, some automation may be the better security there, and having a single sign-on where you disable it in one place and it disables across all 12 different applications you're using. So your security is better by using some automation, and maybe you're following your policy the whole way through. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I really think this could apply to almost anything. You could deploy some of the most advanced security tools, great firewalls. You could have a very robust security training, but if your organization isn't taking it seriously or consistently carrying it out, all these items will help you meet, say, FTC safeguards compliance. But if you're not monitoring those tools, if you haven't deployed them correctly or configured them correctly, or make sure people are taking training, you're not going to be any more secure at the end of the day.
And I'll give one last example of something that happened a while ago. There was a big data breach that Target had a long time ago, and they have PCI compliance requirements because they take credit cards, just like a lot of other businesses do. So they had, prior to the breach that they had, which exposed tons of credit card information out for all the people who've ever paid with something at Target, they were PCI compliant. They had an audit just before. They met their policies and standards. They were, doing things by what their policy says. But in the end, bad guys got access to an account and got into the system, and they found out that there was controls that didn't get audited, right? Or they had something set up that wasn't set up the right way, but it wasn't part of the audit process. So just because you're compliant and even get audited doesn't mean you're not at risk for a data breach or having a bad guy come after you. The security controls are what actually stop the bad guys from getting in.
Definitely some good examples and some great information there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.